Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 23rd of August, 2021. Alright everyone, I hope you had a good weekend. If you weren't able to attend the AMA on Saturday that I did in the Discord channel, the recording is now live for you to kind of view on YouTube here. So if you're interested in going and checking that out, it'll be linked in the YouTube description, or you can just go to the channel and find it there. It was the longest AMA I've ever done at 2 hours and 10 minutes, I believe, and so many good questions. I really had a really fun time answering them, so definitely go watch the replay here. And if you're interested in kind of like chatting with the community again, this Wednesday in the Discord channel we're going to have a bit of a, I guess you could call it shoot the shit night, night for Australians, and all the details for that are in the Discord channel, but essentially that should be fun as well. But yeah, go check this out if you haven't already, and hope to see you on Wednesday possibly. All right, so I think the biggest news from, I guess, like the last 3 days was that Visa bought a CryptoPunk. Now, they bought a floor CryptoPunk, which is essentially the most common one, and they bought it using ETH, of course, because all the CryptoPunks are kind of like listed in ETH on the site there, and they bought it from G Money, who is a long time, I guess, like NFT collector, owns an ape CryptoPunk, I believe. But essentially, they put out this tweet where they said, over the last 60 years, Visa has built a collection of historic commerce artifacts, from early paper credit cards to the Zip Zap machine. Today, as we enter a new era of NFT commerce, Visa welcomes CryptoPunk number 7610 to our collection. Now, what I really liked about this tweet was that they basically acknowledged that CryptoPunks are historic commerce artifacts, right? Like that's right there. I mean, that's pretty crazy, because it's basically acknowledging that NFTs are here to stay. They're going to be big in the future. And I know Visa is kind of like, funny enough, Visa is one of these companies that I guess crypto is trying to disrupt, right? These centralized kind of like financial companies. But I think that's kind of like missing the point. I think the point here really is that this kind of stuff the adoption of this kind of stuff is accelerating like much faster than any of us would have imagined, really. I think it's quite insane that we already have these like billion-dollar publicly traded companies buying NFTs to be part of, I guess, like their collection, essentially, which is insane. So, and it wasn't just like this NFT that they bought. They also put out like a blog post here with an interview with Q. I think that's how I say your name, Q. Hopefully I didn't get that wrong. Q Sheffield, who basically is their crypto and NFT expert at Visa. And in this interview, he basically leaked a lot of alpha. Essentially, what he was saying was, Visa is very interested in NFTs, and they're not just buying a punk for the hell of it to add to their collection. They actually want to support the NFT ecosystem and the creators within it. I mean, could you imagine Visa leveraging their really, really massive user base for like an NFT marketplace or something like that? That'd be quite crazy, because obviously, OpenSea, I mean, for those who don't know, maybe OpenSea's been setting records in kind of like sales volume. The NFT stuff's gone crazy. And really, I still think we're at the very beginning here. I really don't think that we're anywhere near kind of like any sort of top in terms of adoption or whatever. So yeah, Visa sees the writing on the wall and is getting involved really early. And, in this kind of like interview, they basically say that, this is just the beginning of our work in this space. And they really want to, kind of like, I guess, usher, or I guess like push this space forward in any way that they can, but then buying CryptoPunk is just one kind of like part of that, which I thought was really cool. And as I mentioned before, they bought it using ETH, and ETH is money. We've been saying that for quite a while now. Obviously, punks are on the Ethereum network as well, and I think this is the first publicly traded company to own a punk. I actually know it's the first publicly traded company to own a punk, at least publicly. And I think it's maybe one of the first, if not the first, to own an NFT, which is quite crazy when you think about it, right? Like, I mean, there might be other kind of publicly traded funds and things like that kind of, I guess, own NFTs as part of some, I guess, fund that they have or whatever. But in terms of like something like Visa, or I guess like one of these big public companies, them buying punks and NFT and NFT in general is I think a first. And again, I think this sends a signal to the rest of the world, really, that NFTs are here to stay. They're something that should be taken seriously, and Visa's just lending legitimacy to it. And on the refuel, I think I talk about legitimacy a lot, right? Like how Vitalik wrote a blog post about this called "The Most Scarce Resource is Legitimacy," and I think that's correct, because especially within the NFT space, legitimacy is what drives a lot of the kind of, I guess, rarity at the end of the day. Like if a group of people think that something is legitimate, then, I guess like it's like a snowball effect from there. It builds network effects. The perfect example of this is what happened with Pudgy Penguins, where basically a group of people kind of, I guess, started talking about it on Twitter, and they recruited more and more people to the community. More and more people bought these kind of like penguins, and what ended up happening was that the pudgy penguins gained legitimacy. And there's tons of these other projects that haven't got any legitimacy, these profile picture projects, and they aren't really worth anything. Whereas pudgy penguins, Bored Ape Yacht Clubs, another example, obviously CryptoPunks, there's a few of these out there. They're the ones that gain the social legitimacy, and depending on who's giving them this legitimacy, it also holds more weight, right? Like someone like Visa, or I guess like a company like Visa, giving CryptoPunks legitimacy is a massive signal, whereas a tiny little maybe corner store giving crypto, like owning a punk, wouldn't be like a huge deal, right? Because there's obviously different levels of legitimacy there. And this is kind of like similar to what I was saying, I guess, a few months ago about CBDCs and how central banks are looking to kind of like, I guess, create these CBDCs is basically sending a signal to the rest of the world that, they think that crypto is here to stay and it's a legitimate thing. But obviously they want to, issue their own currency and control it in their own sort of way. But that's still kind of like that legitimacy that flows through there, which I think is really, really cool. I put out a kind of tweet here as well saying I just wanted to make it crystal clear that Visa used ETH as money to buy a CryptoPunk. If you had told me that they were going to do this, even only a couple of months ago, if you had told me this was going to happen, I would have been, you're crazy, it's too early. A couple of years ago, since I've been chanting that ETH is money, I would have said, no way in hell, right? Like, it's just amazing how fast this ecosystem has kind of evolved here. And then I went on to say you don't have enough ETH or NFTs. I mean, I'm already like obviously a long-term bull, hyper bullish, always bullish. Like even when we tanked 60% the other month, I was still really, really bullish. But I guess looking at the price movement that we've seen over the weekend, especially, and how we seem to be kind of like, I guess, crabbing around this range of like 3,000 to 3,300, but it certainly feels like the energy is there for us to go back to all-time highs sooner rather than later, and not just, I guess, like ETH going back to all-time high. But basically all these NFTs basically seeing extremely, I guess, like quick adoption, like quicker than any of us can anticipate. And also, I think DeFi as well is obviously, still there. It's obviously quite a lot quieter these days, but it's still there and it's still growing. And it's just, I mean, as soon as I saw this today, I was like, how can I possibly ever be bearish? Like maybe one day far into the future when this stuff's been adopted and is like ubiquitous and it powers the entire financial kind of a system. But, while we're in this still early adopter phase, I find it impossible to be bearish. And people say, okay, well, the market doesn't care what you think, it works in cycles, blah, blah, blah. But it's not really about that for me. Like I've always said that I think the super cycle is more like an adoption super cycle rather than just a price super cycle. The price can do whatever. Like in the short term, it can remain bearish while long-term fundamentals get much stronger. But I think that as we keep going through this adoption phase, as just more and more people see this and they're like, okay, well, why would I sell, my ticket on this rocket ship that's basically going to change the world? And you have more and more of those people kind of thinking like that, and then that's why you get like such reflexivity within crypto. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts on that one. DCInvestor put out a tweet before the Visa news came out. I think it was like maybe a few hours before. What's that? 7:38 a.m. to what I'm recording now. It's about 15 hours before. And he said, I didn't see it a year ago, but I can see it very clearly now. NFTs will cement ETH's dominance. That's it. That's the tweet. This is, I guess, goes back to what I was saying about like ETH being money, but ETH is also, I guess, like the cultural asset of this revolution within NFTs, and like it is the asset at the center of this. Like NFTs don't have to be priced in ETH, but they still are. Like stablecoins aren't exactly a small thing; they're huge. And I think I explained on the AMA that I believe that a big reason why NFTs are priced in ETH, or maybe on the refuel last week I explained this, but I did explain that I think it's because it's just simpler. Right? Because you have to pay gas fees in ETH, and just having ETH is just much easier to transact with in your wallet and things like that. But the funny thing is that when I think about this, I don't know how many people realize that at least in the US, some parts of Europe, definitely in Australia, I don't think many people realize that if you trade ETH for an NFT, that's a capital gains event. So you have to record capital gains tax against the gain that you made on that ETH. And then if you trade that NFT back to ETH, and you lose money in fiat, not in ETH. You can't measure it in ETH. You have to measure it in USD or AUD or whatever. You have to basically that's another capital gain event or loss events, depending if you made money or lost money there. So maybe over time we will just start seeing it kind of priced in stablecoins because of the tax effects there. But still, it's quite amazing to me that not only are they kind of, I guess, priced in ETH, where people use ETH as like that medium of exchange and that kind of like currency, but they're also valued in ETH, right? Where the Punk floor, like when I talk to my friends about the Punk floor, I think it's at like 64 ETH now. We say ETH. We don't really say kind of like the dollar amount. And that, is what, 220,000 US dollars right now. But really, people are wanting to stack ETH. And because you want to stack ETH, you may be trading in and out of NFTs and measuring it in ETH, because if you put 3 ETH into an NFT or whatever, and then you come out with 5 ETH, well, obviously that's better for you. Even if it wasn't like a fiat gain, maybe the ETH price went down during that time, you still made more ETH. Because a lot of the people I know, at least, that are, I guess like playing the NFT game, investing in it, they're definitely using them as a vehicle to stack more ETH. And as we continue on down the path of ETH being, continuing to become this like extremely valuable financial asset that everyone wants to own, that's how more and more people are going to think. I mean, that's how I think about things. Like pretty much like all of the things that I invest in, I measure them against ETH. Like if I'm not outperforming ETH in what I buy, there is literally no reason for me to have held it. And depending on the asset, I need to be outperforming ETH by a lot. Like I've spoken about with DeFi before, how I think that if I'm buying into a kind of like a DeFi asset, I really need to be sure that that's going to kind of like outperform ETH by at least a 3x. Like that's how I kind of view it. I'm not just settling for a 2x. I need at least a 3x and ideally like a 5x, because the amount of extra risk you take on is quite large. And I think that's the same with NFTs, but NFTs can be very reflexive in either direction. Like you can literally make 5x on your ETH in like a day if you pick the right project, right? It's really crazy. So yeah, but it's going to be interesting to see over time if NFTs continue to be priced in ETH as a dominant kind of like currency, or if they kind of like change over to stable coins, but still get valued in ETH, where people still say, okay, well, I only want to price these things in ETH or value them in ETH because I don't really care to stack extra stable coins or stack extra fiat. I want to stack extra ETH. So that's going to be very interesting to see. But anyway, extremely bullish news out of Visa. I read a little bit more about this in the Daily Gwei newsletter today. So definitely go check that out if you haven't already. But I'm going to move on to, I think the next biggest piece of news was that Coinbase have given an update on USDC. So Emilie Choi, the president and COO of Coinbase, put out this tweet thread basically saying, starting September of this year, 2021, USDC reserves will be held in cash and short duration US government treasuries. This is the approach we want for USDC reserves. Now, this comes after a bit of controversy that USDC, it was revealed that I think a few weeks ago, that USDC wasn't actually backed by cash and kind of like government treasury bonds. It was backed by I guess like a bunch of different assets, some of them pretty risky as well. So I think like only 50 or 60% were backed by cash and these government kind of like treasury bonds and things like that, which made holding USDC riskier than it was perceived before. And what I actually really appreciated from Emilie here was that she basically said that, where was it? I think they said that, so when Circle shared their May report about USDC reserves in late July, which included a more diversified pool of investments for the first time, we should have moved faster to update statements like that on our website. And the statement that she's talking about was them saying that USDC is backed by $1 in a bank account when it really isn't. But starting on September, they're just going to be using kind of like cash, which is USD in a bank account, and government treasury bonds, which are pretty much like the safest investment that you can hold, right? Like the safest kind of like asset you can hold outside of I guess fiat in terms of it being stable and I guess like a bunch of other kind of like things along the risk spectrum there. So yeah, USDC I guess like starting September will be back to I guess what people thought it was before, like this safe kind of like, I mean, it's centralized, of course, but like this safe, centralized stablecoin that you could use, and it's regulated, it's transparent, it's not like something like Tether, which people obviously have lots and lots of big issues with, but yeah, I think that it's really cool that Emilie put this tweet thread out, but that she also acknowledged that they could have done better to correct that language to kind of like avoid the confusion, which I'm hoping they do so in the future. So really cool to see that. So kyoronut here posted a image of a Dune Analytics dashboard here that tracks EIP1559. So EIP1559 style transaction dominance is now at 50%, which is really, really cool. I mean, as I mentioned last week on last week's Refuel, MetaMask started rolling out 1559 support to pretty much everyone that was using their kind of like browser extension and mobile wallet, and that's had a dramatic effect here, right? You can see from about, I guess, like August 18th, I think that's when they started rolling it out, the 1559 transaction adoption has been kind of like picking up a lot there, and now we're at 50%. I think we can probably get to 70 or 80% quite quickly, but that last 20% is probably going to take a little while, because that also includes things like exchanges, right? All the exchanges having to enable this, all the wallets within the ecosystem, whether they be large or small, they're going to have to update their kind of like clients and get people using these 1559 style transactions. So I think 70 to 80% will come quite quickly, but that final like 20 to 30% might take a little while there, but that's okay. I think I've been seeing people talk about 1559 recently outside of the fee burn and kind of say, okay, did we really improve the fee market? And I think it's funny because there's a bit of a trade-off here. What we did with 1559 is that we smoothed out the transaction prices, right? Like you'll see that whenever there's like some kind of a crazy NFT drop, the gas will spike for maybe not even 10 minutes or something like that. The gas prices might even go to 1,000 Gwei, but they'll quickly correct, because that's just the mechanism that 1559 has inbuilt into it, where it actually self-corrects a lot quicker because of that dynamic transaction fee pricing there. But on top of that, I think we have like a trade-off, and that trade-off is the fact that, you know how you used to basically wait until like the quietest period of the week to essentially get your transactions in? Well, that doesn't really exist these days. There are certainly periods of time during the week where transaction fees are lower than they will be in other periods of time, like the more active periods, but it's not as a dramatic of a fall off as it was before. Because before, you could essentially have like, say, 50 or 60 Gwei as being the normal average price during the week. And then on the weekend, particularly a Sunday at a certain time, you could even get transactions in between 10 and 20 Gwei, because there just wouldn't be that much activity on the network. But due to 1559, there may be a dip from that 50, 60 Gwei, but it won't be as dramatic as it will have seen in the past, which I think is an okay trade-off, right? Because it means on average, most users across the network, the ones who kind of like, don't want to wait for the weekend to do their transactions and things like that, they definitely get to feel more included and get to kind of like save money on fees here. And if you use 1559 style transactions, you also get a refund, so you're not overpaying too, which I think is really, really cool. So yeah, great to see that 50% adoption number here finally. I'm hoping to see this continue to grow as well. So Loopring put out a teaser over the weekend saying they've got some big news with more details coming this week, and basically they have a video here that just basically says layer 2 NFTs. So yeah, they're going to be adding NFT support to their ZK rollup layer 2, which I think is going to be really cool. I've talked about Loopring plenty of times on the Refuel before. They've got an entire layer 2 ecosystem running right now, right from their exchanges like the AMM and the order book exchanges to their smart wallet and things like that. They have a lot of stuff going on there, like their payments protocol too, and they're still here. I know I haven't spoken about Loopring in a little while, but they're still here, they're still growing, they're still basically powering, I guess, like the L2 revolution here, which I think is really, really awesome. And, there's obviously not just Loopring, but a bunch of other kind of like L2s are kind of like upgrading their systems, coming to life. I mean, Arbitrum here announced that Huobi is going to be supporting them, direct deposits and withdrawals on Arbitrum One, which is supposed to go live, I guess by the end of this month, or this month. It's funny because, like, are they going to push it to the end of the month? Are they going to like literally do it on the last day? I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Arbitrum. But as I've said in the past, they haven't missed a kind of like, I guess, release window before. So I'm, super excited for them to go live with their, I guess, like public mainnet. And the fact that they're going to have Huobi as a centralized exchange supporting direct deposits and withdrawals is going to really, I think, be a really positive thing for Arbitrum One, because that's going to be a way for lots of users to quickly get into this layer 2 ecosystem and experience what a layer 2 on Ethereum is like. So really, really excited for that, of course. And Huobi isn't the only exchange. There's, I think, OKX and OKCoin are also supporting Arbitrum. I do wonder if exchanges like Coinbase, and Kraken and all that will support them. I think Binance and FTX might be a bit slower. Obviously, Binance, because they have a vested interest to support just BSC, and FTX is obviously very close to the Solana ecosystem. So it's going to be interesting to see if they enable those kind of like deposits and withdrawals there. But if not, there's still other ways to get in, which I think is really, really cool. And you can obviously get into Arbitrum One from Layer 1 Ethereum as well, provided you pay the gas fees, of course, and things like that. All right, so Glass put out an update, or Glass Protocol put out an update over the weekend, basically reintroducing themselves. Now, I've spoken about Glass before. It's basically this kind of like Web3 video platform. They call it video owned by the people instead of the platform. And basically in this post, they I guess like they go through the design philosophy, how they imagine kind of like the I guess like decentralized video space kind of evolving, how they kind of place themselves in that through this master plan that they've got here on the infrastructure side, the creator monetization, and the recommenders and moderation. I think I've spoken about moderation a lot in terms of the Web3 world before, because obviously moderation is I guess like a big concern, because there's a lot of content that gets posted online that is usually moderated away by a centralized entity. But how do you do moderation in a decentralized world, especially on the video front? So I think that, in this post they detail that, and they kind of like give some history and things like that, and how the, I guess, Web2 world works and handles this. So you can definitely check out the kind of like YouTube description for a link to this. But I thought this was really cool, because I'm actually planning to hopefully use Glass and maybe kind of like mirror upload the videos, to YouTube and to Glass, and kind of like see how that platform goes there. Because I really do want to see Web3 kind of like decentralized, kind of like decentralized social media and decentralized video streaming, all that sort of stuff, really come to life and take off, because that is like the next frontier for this technology, right? We have had DeFi, we've had like NFTs, we've had DAOs. That's still all growing and stuff like that, like social tokens, all that sort of stuff. But I really want to see an amazing, long-lived kind of like truly decentralized attempt at the Web3 stack. And I've spoken about Aave building decentralized social media before, decentralized Twitter. Glass is doing decentralized video. The platform that they posted this on, Mirai, is doing decentralized content publishing and basically giving power back to the creators to kind of monetize, instead of giving all the power to the platform themselves and all the kind of like money to the platform themselves. So yeah, this is going to be really cool to see how that plays out. Definitely go check out this blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description. So the head of gaming at YouTube put out a tweet over the weekend saying, I'm bullish on NFTs. And then he continues with, I believe play to earn is the next major gaming model, as well as an open market for in-game digital items. Most in-game assets are illiquid, which is insane to me. All of this will change long-term through blockchain and NFTs. It's self-evident. I mean, yes, it is. And I think I've spoken about this before, where I basically said Axie Infinity has shown the world how powerful play-to-earn games are, blockchain games are, NFTs are. It's just one game making a lot of revenue. They're worth billions of dollars, their token and everything like that. And this is just the very, very beginning. I think I've mentioned it before, where I know plenty of AAA studios, from what I've heard, are now kind of like diving deep into this stuff, trying to understand it, trying to see how they can get involved and things like that. It's just, really, the fact that the head of gaming at YouTube is saying this is, again, another kind of like signal of legitimacy. How I was talking about that with the Visa news. The head of gaming at YouTube saying that NFTs are kind of like revolutionary, and it's going and kind of like play to earn models are the next major gaming model, is much more effective than just like a random person saying it. Even me saying it, like, it's much more effective than me just telling you, because this is social signaling, this is social legitimacy, and YouTube is obviously absolutely massive. And now I spoke just before I spoke about Glass and how they're decentralizing video content and video publishing, and how I'm really bullish on that. But generally, there's going to be still kind of like these centralized players for a very long time. So if we can act as a forcing function, like our ecosystem act as a forcing function for these centralized companies to basically adopt this technology, we can force them to innovate, and we can make the adoption curve, I guess, a lot quicker than having to wait for these companies to kind of realize what they've been missing out on. And I think that crypto really does that. It accelerates all of this adoption, and it's going to be absolutely wild to see how YouTube handles this. They don't even have to kind of like do anything NFT specific. They can essentially just enable crypto payments for even just gamers as a trial, right? They basically have like a tip button, use maybe an Ethereum L2 or something like that for tipping or whatever, and get users to load their wallet with a direct fiat on-ramp. Just like similar to what Reddit's doing in the community point system, where they have like they're building on Arbitrum, and they're going to have community points trading on there, and people being able to send it to each other and all that sort of stuff. The possibilities are endless here, and I'm sure all YouTube, all these other companies, and all these kind of game companies are cooking up things in the behind the scenes, and we're going to just keep hearing more and more about this as time goes on. So speaking of L2s, Brendan from Dharma announced today that they're adding Polygon support, the Polygon POS chain in beta to their app. So you can basically go from USD, real fiat dollars, to ETH on Dharma, and it's about to get better pricing than Coinbase, because you can go directly to Polygon, which Polygon's POS chain, which has kind of like obviously cheaper fees than Ethereum's mainnet, right? Which I think is really, really cool. And they're going to be supporting other L2s as well. I mean, you can see here when a real L2 like Optimism or Arbitrum, next DM. So yeah, I guess like this is just like logical for Dharma to I guess be the fiat on ramped into these L2s and into these scalability solutions. Obviously, the Polygon POS chain is not like a true L2, but it's still an Ethereum scalability solution. And I've said before, I think I've said it plenty of times, where I believe that these fiat on ramps are going to be the thing that bring kind of like mass adoption to these scalability solutions, especially to L2s and things like that. And it's going to get more and more people involved without having to go through the layer 1 Ethereum chain and incur those higher fees on there. So yeah, really, really cool to see this from Dharma. All right, so for those of you who missed this, you may have missed this over the weekend. There was a bit of turbulence on the Beacon chain where about 4% of validators were not attesting to blocks, and that kind of caused, I guess, a little bit of instability here. Ben Edgington has a really, really great tweet thread explaining exactly what happened, but the TLDR is that one of the bigger staking providers had, I guess, like a bit of an issue with their kind of like nodes or their validators, and these validators kind of, I guess, weren't attesting to blocks correctly, and blocks were getting orphaned and missed and all that sort of stuff. And then, he kind of goes on to say that there may need to be a little bit of changes in the Beacon chain to be less sensitive to this sort of stuff, because I think that the way it currently is isn't ideal. But this was really, really cool, and I think that the fact that we get like really quick kind of, I guess, post-mortems for this sort of stuff from the core devs and researchers is the really special thing about the Ethereum ecosystem, where essentially we don't say, oh my god, okay, well, this happened, and kick and scream and complain about it, and then a few weeks time we'll hear about it. We hear about these things really, really fast. Like, if you remember, there was an issue with the Prism client a few months ago. The Prior Labs team, the one that makes the Prism client, had a post-mortem up within a couple of days, and it was extremely detailed. So I feel really blessed that we have these researchers and engineers within the ETH2 ecosystem that are so dedicated to their craft that they're happy to put out like this public information, and they're not hiding anything either. Like, obviously some of this stuff can be kind of twisted in a way to spread FUD about Ethereum, saying, oh, look, Ethereum had an issue, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But really, this is just the openness of our ecosystem, and we don't care if this gets twisted or whatever. People can say whatever they want to say. We'd rather get the truth out there. We'd rather improve as an ecosystem than kind of like stay kind of, I guess, like quiet about this and sweep it under the rug, which I really thought was really, which I think is really cool. And you can go check out this thread. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. But I think on that note, I'm going to leave you for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.